Good evening, and welcome to Tales from Perdition. This is Chapter 5, Operation Nightwing. Riona dug through one of the trunks tied down to her trailer. She set out the various weapons, armor, and equipment she needed to put on. She first went about the rather lengthy process of putting on her riot armor. She tightened down each strap and attached the rest of the various pouches, webbing, and belts she needed. She glanced at the others as they geared up. Rihanna watched as the other three donned their own respective rigs. Nat specifically had changed into an olive drab, slim-fitting jumpsuit. Its color was faded and washed out. She wore a tan plate carrier over it. She wore a headscarf of a similar yellow to her gloves. The material was alien to look at. It didn't look like wool. It seemed almost metallic, but it could still pass off as a fabric. The weapon Nat had seemingly picked made Riona question her common sense. She held in her gloved hands a submachine gun. Not just any gun, the piece of shit that is the TAC-9, although it looked different. It was of similar design, but looked to be some strange variant she had never seen before. The receiver of the firearm emitted an unearthly yet dim glow to it. Military escorts sure do love their unconventional weapons. The two other wayfinders both donned their plate carriers. Farron wore a long, dark green overcoat that reached to her knees. She kept a purple scarf pulled up to her face. Riona loaded a 40mm shell into her grenade launcher, emitting a small smile as the HE shell was locked into place. She adjusted the chin strap on her riot helmet. Farron raised an eyebrow at the amount of armor adorned on her body. They all did a quick radio check, making sure to all be on the same frequency. Riona attached her unique riot shield to an easy-to-reach part of her rucksack. She hoped that it would work well in the hazard zone. Acer's already picked a codename for our mission, Operation Nightwing. From here on, call signs only. They did a quick glance over everyone's call sign. Riona's was Angel, obviously. Nat was Chekhov. Farron's is Cryptid. And Alan is Remington. You ready? Nat asked as she watched her hoist the rucksack onto herself. Yep, let's get going. Without any delay, they headed off into the great unknown. They left behind the last safe place they would encounter for many miles as they drove through the open road barrier. They felt the air chained around them like many eyes that suddenly set their gazes on them. A chill went down Riona's spine as the drive continued. She hated feeling like she was watched. The awe-inspiring snow-capped mountains of the Cascades distracted Riona from her current predicament. Even though it was likely inhabited by horrific anomalies that now called the mountains home, she still found it to be beautiful. The drive lasted a good 40 minutes. The sensation of being watched remained as the walls of pines and cedars cleared to reveal a small, ruined town. An unearthly moss covered each rooftop. A sickly glow emanated from each wispy strand. The historical town of Winthrop had once been a destination of tourism in the area. Now it stood, forgotten and abandoned. Nature had already begun to retake it. Half-rusted cars dotted the road ahead. Moldy trash littered the road. The fire team parked their ATVs at the edge of town. Riona sighed as the incoherent whispering started. It was neither masculine nor feminine. It simply was. No one knew why, but did it matter? For Riona, it was just part of her job. Luckily, she already had on her EarPro headphones, muffling the eerie voices. The other group members simply took out some earbuds and turned on some music at a low volume to block out the constant whispering. Riona pulled down her visor of her helmet and got off her ATV. What's the plan? Riona asked Nat softly. Nat squinted her pink eyes and looked around her surroundings. The edge of the town was sparsely developed. A few lodges and cabins stood a few hundred feet from the main road. Nat pointed at one of the lodges that were still structurally sound. Riona took out her rangefighters to take a closer look at the building. The windows were foggy but still intact. The two-story lodge stood at the end of the long driveway. Two gutted cars were in front of the garage door. It was hard to tell what may be inside. Hopefully, nothing called it home. Riona put away her rangefinders and looked back at Nat as she continued to talk. Well, that's where we'll spend the night. Angel, you're on point. Riona nodded in agreement, making her way to the front of the group. Farron's ears twitched as she listened for anything. She withdrew an arrow from her quiver, latching it onto the bowstring. The golden-eyed wayfinder adjusted the sling of her rifle. She kept it at a patrol carry across her chest. Alan held his rifle close to him, keeping his head on a swivel. The fire team walked down the empty driveway. Despite the amount of equipment Riona wore, her footsteps were silent on the weathered asphalt. A gentle breeze blew through the trees, lightly gliding the fallen leaves across the forest floor. Nat walked with quiet confidence with her submachine gun pointed in the air. Her glassy eyes glanced at each window of the lodge, searching for any signs of movement. She looked back at the wayfinders as they were walking, as if studying them. Something about her eyes made them all feel a little uneasy. No light lay behind her eyes. Riona shuddered and reminded her of seeing the eyes of a comatose patient. The four of them reached the porch. Various pieces of dirty patio furniture lay strewn about. A strange fungus splotched the wood of most of the tables and chairs. All the windows looking outside to the front porch were covered with curtains behind the panes of glass. The fire team stacked up to the sides of the door, a pair of them on each side of the wall surrounding the door. Alan stowed his rifle and withdrew a sawed-off Remington 870 from somewhere in his jacket. Farron drew a Beretta from her holster, stowing her compound bow for now. Nat put a finger to where her mouth would be on her headscarf. The military escort wanted this done quietly. Riona let her rifle hang from her vest as she reached for the lightweight shield on her rucksack. The wayfinder attached the magnetized shield to her charging gauntlet. The electrostatic polymer that made up her shield whirred to life. The material hardened and formed itself into a shield that could even block attacks from a Class 4 anomaly. The magnets in the protective shield could hold well up to 105 pounds. Riona rested her rifle in a groove that enabled her to use her assault rifle while still being able to use her shield at the same time. Riona nodded as she looked over at the others. Alan crept forward. He slowly turned a knob to test if it was locked. Alan looked back at Riona and gave her a small smile and a thumbs up. Lucky them. The door was unlocked. Riona stood at the ready as Alan opened the door. The shield wielder was the first to enter the lodge. The interior was much more intact than most of the buildings that were left behind after the disasters. The entrance room was mostly bare, minus a few weathered-looking shoes scattered around the floor. There were two doorways, one leading to a furnished living room, the other leading to a dusty kitchen. A carpeted stairway led to the second floor. Riona turned sharply, fast walking to the living room. Her feline eyes scanned the room for anything. This room still had an intact couch and fireplace, which Riona was grateful for, that they didn't have to have a fire outside, which was safer that way. The wayfinders continued forward into the kitchen. The cabinets appeared to be ransacked with various cans and wrappers littering the dusty countertops. A small dining room was attached to the kitchen. Much like the countertops, a dark wooden table was covered in a layer of dust. A screen door leads to a beat-up patio with most of the outdoor furniture overturned. Although Riona was a bit rusty at taking charge, however, Nat seemed a bit out of it, judging from the bags under her eyes. In Riona's eyes, escorts shouldn't have to worry about micromanaging everything. Alright, Chekhov and Remington, stay here while Cryptid and I check upstairs. It's a bit cramped up there for all of us. Make sure nothing invites itself in. Alan nodded while Nat gave Riona a deadpan expression. Maybe she should have asked first. She made a note to apologize later. Riona looked back at the wolf-eared wayfinder. They both nodded at each other. Farron's ears twitched as she listened for any sounds upstairs. Her green eyes widened suddenly. There's something up there, she whispered to Riona. The cat-eyed wayfinder trained her assault rifle on the stairway. Riona's gaze focused as she put her finger on the trigger. Where? She whispered back to Farron. not taking her eyes off the stairway. I don't know. I heard it walking. I think it's pacing, wherever it is. Rihanna nodded slightly in the response. Farron tapped her shortwave radio. The other two were elsewhere in the other rooms. This is Cryptid, hearing something upstairs. Angel and I will investigate. Over. Nat's matter-of-fact voice responded on the radio. Copy that. Stay alert. Without needing any other initiative, Rihanna walked up the stairs with Farron following closely behind. The pair reached the top of the stairs. Dusty family photos desperately clinging to the discolored walls. Rihanna rounded the corner of the hallway. 3 doors stood at the end of the cramped hallway. Without a word, Rihanna continued. She could feel her senses hone in completely on every single noise, every creak. The Wayfinder could hear each time the building settled, as if it was exhaling, as if it was alive. The Wayfinder could hear each time the building settled, as if it was exhaling like it was alive. It honestly wouldn't surprise her if that were the case. Anything seemed possible in this place. Farron tapped Rihanna's shoulder and pointed at one of the faded white doors, indicating it's in there, whatever it is. Rihanna wasted no time as she silently strode towards the door. Farron watched her back as she tried the door. The door did not give. It was locked from the inside. She couldn't exactly pick the lock, it didn't have a keyhole. Rihanna stood in front of the door. She sent a powerful kick into the door. The door flung open. Rihanna quickly moved in. Something made her stop dead in her tracks. She was ready to face another bloodthirsty anomaly or a spiteful fae. But instead, standing in the middle of what looked to be a child's room, was a little girl. She stared at the armored Wayfinder with wide eyes. Her entire form was wispy. The child curled itself into a ball. She whimpered as she covered her face. Rihanna sighed and put away her shield, lowering her rifle. She looked back at Farron, who stared back at her with melancholy eyes. Go clear the rest of the rooms. I can take care of this. Farron nodded and turned away to clear the other 2 rooms. Rihanna turned to the child's room. She held down the push-to-talk button on her rig. This is Angel. We found an active spirit. Over. Nat's all-business voice once again responded over the comms channel. Is it hostile? She's terrified. What followed was a long pause on the radio channel. Nat responded with a slight sigh in her voice. Copy. Rihanna slung her rifle over her shoulder as she took a few steps into the room. The Wayfinder slowly kneeled down to her height. The little girl looked no older than 8. She slowly peeked out from her hands at the woman in front of her. The Wayfinder flipped her visor up. Hopefully that would put her at a little more ease. The child tilted her head as she took in Rihanna's feminine features. She seemed a bit wary of Rihanna, but she was at least maintaining eye contact with her. That's usually a good sign. Your eyes, she said as her ghostly gaze focused on Rihanna's eyes, who in turn gave her a small, encouraging smile. They're pretty. Rihanna's smile warmed at the compliment. Rihanna did find it strange, though. First, she was huddled in a ball, and now she was giving her compliments. Thanks. Don't worry, we won't bother you if you don't want us to. Some spirits were lonely, some just wanted to be left alone. In many cases, it was safer to leave them alone. The ghostly girl looked at her with a confused expression. I like meeting new people. Except that bat. It's scary. Rihanna pursed her lips. The Nightwing, as Acer dubbed it. She hated it. Especially for killing those 2 Acer soldiers and putting her in a hospital bed. It surely would have ripped her apart as well if it had gotten the chance. It wasn't killing to survive. Like a wild dog, it killed for sport. She still had a score to settle with it. And that was Chapter 5 of Angel's Tale. I hope you enjoyed that. And as usual, good night, listeners. Good night.